Hello, my name is Steve. I am one of the Carbon Landscape Project Support Officers. This presentation is all about the identification and removal of invasive species. This information is intended to set you up for the relevant AQA accreditation, but it can also be just a very simple introduction to some of our conservation work on the carbon landscape. So, what is an invasive species? Basically, any non-native species that modifies or disrupts the ecosystems it colonises. That is to say, a plant or animal from a different country that affects the plants or animals in this country. So which species are invasive? There's lots of them. Can you name any of these? This one is Impatiens glandiflora, otherwise known as Himalayan balsam. Introduced in the 19th century, Himalayan balsam crowds out native plants and steals the pollinators, like the bees. Heracleum mantegazzianum, giant hogweed. This was introduced in the early 19th century. It can reach over 3 meters high, the height of a house. Its sap is phytophototoxic, which means to say it reacts with sunlight to burn the skin. It also causes phytophotodermatitis. This is a skin condition. It crowds out and shades other native plants through its sheer size. Fallopoeia japonica. This is Japanese knotweed, again introduced in the early 19th century. It's tenacious. It can grow through concrete. Again, it crowds out our native plants. Crassula helmsii, aka stonecrop, aka New Zealand pygmy weed. This came over in 1911. If left, it can achieve 100% cover on the wetland it colonises. Pygmy weed is a problem because it stops the light reaching the plants lower down in the water. It also uses up the oxygen in the water, which can be a problem for all life in there, such as the invertebrates, the fish, and other plants. Rhododendron ponticum. This was brought over in the early 19th century. Those darn Victorians. This shrub creates an impenetrable canopy, so any plants shorter than it cannot get any sunlight. It harbours diseases such as Phthora ramorum, which affects oak trees, beech trees, and other native tree species. It also leaves a thick litter layer, further discouraging native wildflower species. This cutie pie is Squirrel carolinensis, otherwise known as the grey squirrel. It outcompetes native red squirrels. It breeds very fast. They can have multiple litters a year, and by late summer, the first litter is often sexually mature and having its own young. Grey squirrels carry squirrel pox, which is fatal to the red squirrels. However, greys are immune. They are also bigger, stronger, hungrier, and they push the native reds out of their territories. Mustela visum, the American mink. This was introduced for fur farming. However, many of them escaped or were released by animal rights activists and unscrupulous farmers. They eat anything they can. They are amphibious and believed to be responsible for the decline in the numbers of water voles in the UK. Passifactus aenusculus, that's easy for you to say. The signal crayfish. This was introduced in the 1970s. It outcompetes native white-clawed crayfish, of which there has been a 50 to 80% decline in numbers in recent years. They're bigger, stronger, hungrier, and with far more reproductive potential. Yes, that is a euphemism. Harmonia axyridis, the Harlequin Ladybird. These came over in the early 21st century, so not that long ago. They have a voracious appetite. They eat mainly aphids, but when it runs out of those, it does eat the native ladybird larvae. Vespa velutina, the Asian hornet. These kill and eat the native bees, wasps, and other flying insects. So why are these a problem? Well, let's look at plants first of all. Let's look at what plants need. They need nutrients to survive and grow. Air, they need the CO2, the carbon dioxide, for the respiration. They need water to survive and grow, and warmth as well to survive and grow. They use light for energy, for their photosynthesis. And they also use soil for stability, but also this is where they get their water and nutrients from. So, we have plants getting nutrients and water from the earth. But then we have bugs that eat these plants, the plant itself or the leaf litter or decaying vegetation that it leaves. Then we have bugs that eat the bugs that eat those plants, birds that eat the bugs that eat the plants, birds that eat the bugs that eat the bugs that eat the plants, mammals that eat the bugs that eat the plants, mammals that eat the bugs that eat the bugs that eat the plants, mammals that eat the mammals that eat the bugs that eat the bugs that eat the plants, birds that eat the mammals that eat the bugs that eat the bugs that eat the plants, mammals that eat the birds that eat the bugs that eat the bugs that eat the plants, and of course mammals that eat the plants and birds that eat the plants. The problem happens when one of these links is broken. For example, if you have a plant that is crowded out by Himalayan balsam, then bugs that rely on that plant solely for its food source will die out. And any animals, other bugs, birds that rely on that bug for their food source will also suffer. Biodiversity means the variety of life in a given place, a habitat or biosphere. This is what we strive for, the maximum sustainable amount of habitat with a maximum sustainable amount of life, plants and animals. Monoculture means a habitat dominated by a single organism. This is what we want to avoid. So basically what we want is lots of different insects, lots of different flowers, lots of different plants, lots of different mammals and lots of different birds. How do we manage these invasive species? Well, let's start with plants, the flora. With Himalayan balsam, we hand pull it. We can also brush cut it or trim it. With any of these methods, it's important that the stem is broken beneath the first node, the ridge, so when we're hand pulling, we pull, we break, and we stomp. With rhododendron, we have to cut it. So using our hands, we use bow saws and loppers. If we're mechanically cutting it, we use chainsaws. It's important to get rid of the arisings, either by burning, chipping them and removing the chippings, or removing the whole thing from sight. We then need to treat the stumps, either by pulling them out, removing the stumps, or with a herbicide. Speaking of herbicide, Japanese knotweed requires spraying or injection. Giant hogweed also requires spraying. When talking about managing invasive animals, it can get a bit grim. The only accepted way currently of dealing with invasive animals is trapping. Regular traps for grey squirrels and rafts for mink. Another way would be the reintroduction programs of otters. This has had some success. However, it has been shown that some mink have been able to adapt when otters have been introduced into their territories. So how about us? How do we get started? Well, in the carbon landscape, it's always safety first. So we need to wear the correct protection. For instance, gloves to protect our hands from blisters, cuts, stings, grazes. Steel toe capped boots to protect our toes from dropped tools, dropped wood, dropped logs, things like that. Also to protect our ankles from the uneven terrain. And of course, there's also the specific protective equipment when you're using a chainsaw or herbicide or pesticides. However, with these methods, you do need a special license and special training. The type of equipment you'll be using, things like tools such as loppers and bow saws for rhododendron, grass rake and wheelbarrows to clean up after ourselves. You may also need a license for things like brush cutters, chainsaws and knapsack sprayers. You need a license, you need training with these tools. As a Carbon Landscape volunteer, you are eligible for our rewards and recognition package. You can complete the Identifying and Removing Invasive Species AQA accreditation. Simply ask for one of these sheets from your group leader and volunteer. Each time you complete one of the outcomes on the sheet, get the group leader to fill out the date on there, complete 10 hours of volunteering, and we'll sort you out with your accreditation. If you have any questions, contact us on our email on the screen in front of you. You can also check out our website or any one of our social media networks. Thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with me, especially with those difficult Latin names.